Have you ever laid in bed at the end of the day, staring at the ceiling, and asked yourself, who did I really live for today? Have you ever felt drained from trying to please everyone, your parents, your colleagues, your friends, only to realize the one person you kept ignoring was yourself? It's that strange emptiness, standing in the middle of a noisy crowd, yet feeling completely hollow inside. We live in a culture that tells us, you must be validated to have value. You must always have someone by your side to be strong. You must stay busy, constantly connected, or you'll fall behind. And so we chase it. You post a picture and obsess over who liked it. You make a decision, then immediately second-guess yourself because you fear what others will say. You dream of living on your own terms, but you hesitate, terrified that if you fail, people will laugh. And the result? You lose touch with yourself. You no longer hear your own inner voice, only the noise of everyone else. But think about it. Weren't the biggest turning points in your life the moments when you dare to walk alone? When you turn away from the safe path to pursue a career you truly wanted? When you ended a toxic relationship? Knowing solitude was a price of freedom. When you launch a project no one believed in, but you push forward anyway? Those solitary moments, painful as they felt, are the very ones that built your strength. In this video, I'm going to share with you 7 principles of the Stoic Warrior, not abstract philosophy, but practical tools you can use immediately. A 10-minute morning ritual to anchor your mind in peace. A failure audit method to turn setbacks into your personal curriculum. Boundary scripts that let you say no with kindness and confidence. And much more. If you've ever grown weary of bending yourself to fit the expectations of others, if you long for a life built on freedom, strength, and self-mastery, then stay with me until the end. Because I prepared something for you. The Stoic Warrior Kit, a condensed guide to all 7 principles, so you can start practicing them today. Now, let's begin with the very first principle, the foundation of all inner strength. Sacred solitude. Principle number 1, sacred solitude. Most people are terrified of being alone. The moment silence creeps in, they reach for the phone, turn on the TV, or drown themselves in endless scrolling. They treat solitude as punishment, as if being with their own mind is a kind of prison. But solitude isn't emptiness. It's sacred space. It's the quiet workshop where your deepest wisdom begins to speak. The Stoics knew this. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." His time in isolation wasn't wasted. It was a fertile ground where philosophy and insight grew strong enough to guide humanity for thousands of years. Think about it. When you strip away the noise of other people's expectations, when you stop performing for an invisible audience, what's left is the raw truth of who you are. That truth can feel frightening at first, especially if you've built your whole identity around external validation. But for the Stoic Warrior, it's liberation. Let me give you a real picture. Imagine a 42-year-old professional who's climbed the corporate ladder, respected in the office, always surrounded by colleagues and deadlines. Yet every time they're alone, truly alone, they feel restless, even anxious. They've never learned to enjoy their own company, so they keep filling the silence. Until one day, burnout hits, and they have no choice but to sit with themselves. At first, it feels unbearable. But slowly, something shifts. Instead of running from the silence, they begin to hear a voice they had ignored for decades, their own. And that voice is what saves them. The Stoic Warrior schedules solitude the way an athlete schedules training. It's not random, it's disciplined. Because solitude isn't about isolation, it's about alignment. When you sit with yourself long enough, you discover what you really believe, what you truly value, what you are actually made of. And here's the good news. You don't need to retreat to a cabin in the mountains to experience this. You can start small. I call it the Solitude 10 Ritual. Step 1, 3 minutes. Breathe, sit quietly. No phone, no music. Just breathe and scan your body. Notice where you hold tension. Step 2, 3 minutes. Reflect, ask yourself one question. What am I avoiding right now? Don't judge. Just observe. Step 3 for minutes. Choose, write down one small action you'll take today that aligns with your values, not with someone else's expectations. That's 10 minutes. Anyone can do it. And those 10 minutes, done consistently, will build more clarity than hours of endless noise. Over time, you'll expand. Take walks without headphones, eat a meal in silence, maybe even travel alone for a day or two. Each practice trains you to stand firmly in your own presence. Remember, the world is full of people fighting battles for external territory, money, status, recognition. But the real battle, the one that decides everything else, happens in those quiet moments when you are completely alone with your soul. Sacred solitude isn't about loneliness. It's about freedom. Freedom from the exhausting game of validation. Freedom from the prison of others' expectations. And freedom to finally hear the wisdom that's been whispering inside you all along. Principle number 2, opinion immunity. One of the most exhausting prisons you can ever live in is the prison of other people's opinions. How many times have you hesitated, not because you didn't know what you wanted, but because you were worried about what someone else might think? You wanted to wear something different, but you thought, what will people say? You wanted to start a project, but you heard your family's voice in your head. That's unrealistic. You felt a dream burning inside you, but you buried it because you feared strangers on social media might laugh. This invisible weight crushes countless lives. And here's the truth the Stoic Warrior understands. What others think of you is none of your business. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events themselves, but from our judgments about them. The same is true with opinions. When someone criticizes you, they're not handing you a piece of truth about yourself. They're revealing a piece of truth about themselves, their fears, their regrets, their limitations. Think of a friend who scoffs at your ambition. More often than not, it's because they've abandoned their own. Think of a relative who mocks your choices. They may be projecting their own insecurities or unfulfilled potential. Their opinion is not about you. It's about them. But here's the challenge. Knowing this intellectually doesn't make it easy to ignore in practice. We've been conditioned since childhood to seek approval. The Stoic Warrior builds what I call opinion immunity, a kind of inner shield that separates useful feedback from background noise. How do you build it? With a simple tool, the opinion filter 2x2. Picture a square divided into 4 boxes. Ask 2 questions whenever someone gives you input. Does this person live a life I would want to live? Is their feedback specific and constructive, or vague and dismissive? If the answer is yes to both, take it seriously. That's wisdom. If the answer is no to either, let it pass. That's noise. Here's a story. A woman in her 50s, after decades in a career she never loved, decided to start a small bakery. Her old colleagues whispered, "She's too old for this. It'll never work." She could let that stop her. But she asked, do they live the life I want? Are they giving me specific advice? Or just projecting their fear? The answer was obvious. She opened her bakery. It thrived, not because everyone approved, but because she stopped needing them to. You can practice this starting today. The next time you catch yourself about to make a decision based on what others might think, pause and ask, what would I do if nobody was watching? Then do that. Each time you act in alignment with your values instead of their opinions, you strengthen your freedom muscle. Remember, even if you please 99 people, one person's disapproval can still haunt you, if you let it. Opinion immunity means you're no longer playing a game you can never win. The only opinion that truly matters is the one you hold of yourself when you look in the mirror each night. The Stoic Warrior isn't arrogant. They're simply free. Free to listen without being enslaved. Free to act without begging for permission. Free to walk their own path with clarity and courage. Principle number 3, the strength of self-reliance. There's a common misconception in our culture that being self-reliant means being cold, distant, or selfish. But the truth is the exact opposite. Self-reliance is not about pushing people away. It's about building such a strong foundation within yourself that when you do connect with others, you do so from a place of wholeness, not from neediness. Think about the safety instructions on an airplane. Put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. It's not selfish, it's wisdom. If you lose consciousness while trying to help the person next to you, now there are 2 people in danger instead of 1. The same principle applies to life. If you're constantly relying on others for your stability, your happiness, or even your identity, you're not just vulnerable, You're powerless. Ralph Waldo Emerson, heavily influenced by Stoic thought, once wrote, "Nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Nothing can bring you peace but the triumph of principles." In other words, the deeper your inner resources, the more you can actually give to the world. Imagine someone who has never learned to stand on their own. Every setback sends them spiraling because they need someone else to rescue them. Every decision feels paralyzing because they crave external approval. They cannot lead because they've never dared to walk alone. Contrast that with the person who has cultivated self-reliance. They face challenges with calm. They solve problems without panic. And when they choose to ask for help, it comes from strength, not desperation. So what does self-reliance look like in practice? It starts with 3 basic arenas of life. Physical self-reliance. Learn to care for your health. Know how to prepare a simple, nourishing meal. Build the habit of daily movement. Your body is your first fortress. If it crumbles, everything else follows. Financial self-reliance. Understand how money flows in and out of your life. Learn the basics of budgeting, saving, and investing. You don't need to be wealthy to be free, but you do need to be in control. Emotional self-reliance. This is what the Stoics called emotional sovereignty. It's the ability to process your feelings without always leaning on others to fix you. Journaling, meditation, and mindful breathing are simple tools that keep you steady when storms come. From there, you can go deeper. Intellectual curiosity, spiritual grounding, creative expression. Each layer of competence you build is another brick in the foundation of your freedom. Here's a practical step you can take today. Identify one area where you've been leaning too heavily on others. Maybe you depend on a partner to manage your finances. Maybe you always seek a friend to regulate your emotions. Maybe you avoid making decisions unless someone else confirms them. Choose one of those areas and take a small step toward independence this week. Cook one meal for yourself. Balance your own budget. Make one decision without polling anyone first. Self-reliance does not mean you no longer need people. It means you are finally free to choose relationships for growth and joy, not for survival. The Stoic Warrior doesn't isolate. They build a strong self so that when they do give love and serve, they are giving from abundance, not from emptiness. Self-reliance is the bedrock of freedom, and without it, you're forever at the mercy of others. With it, you become unshakable. Principle number 4, failure as your private university. Most people treat failure like a deadly disease. They run from it. They hide it. They pretend it never happened. But the Stoic Warrior treats failure differently. To them, failure is not the opposite of success. It is the raw material of success. It is not punishment. It is tuition. Thomas Edison once said, after thousands of unsuccessful attempts at creating the light bulb, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that will not work." That mindset is not about blind optimism. It is about understanding that every misstep is part of curriculum. Here's what the motivational posters never tell you. The real work of processing failure doesn't happen in public. It happens alone. It happens in the quiet hours when the noise has died down and all that's left is you, your disappointment, and your choices. That is when you either avoid the lesson or you enroll in the University of Failure. Let me give you an example. A man in his late 40s leaves a secure corporate job to start his own consultancy. At first, he's excited. He invests his savings, builds a website, tells everyone about his new venture. But within 6 months, nothing is working. Clients aren't coming in. Bills are piling up. Friends and family begin to whisper that he made a mistake. He could have drowned in shame. But instead, he sat down with himself without distraction and performed what I call a failure audit. The failure audit is a practice of asking 3 key questions after every significant setback. First, what was within my control that I could have done differently? Second, what was outside my control that I must learn to accept? Third, what lesson here can make me stronger for the next attempt? When you ask these questions honestly, you move from self-pity to self-education. You stop blaming circumstances, and you start building resilience. In the consultant's case, he realized he had underestimated the time needed to build trust in a new market. That was within his control. He could have networked earlier. He also recognized an unexpected economic downturn was outside his control. There was no use wasting energy resenting it. Finally, he saw the lesson. He needed to diversify his services instead of relying on a single offering. That insight turned his next year into a success. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, captured this spirit when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The obstacle is not there to block you. It is there to train you. Here's the paradox. The more willing you are to fail in private, the less likely you are to fail in catastrophic ways. Because every small private failure is a rehearsal. Every time you sit with a sting of disappointment, dissect it, and extract wisdom, you build what modern thinkers call anti-fragility, the ability to grow stronger through stress. You can start your own failure practice right now. The next time something doesn't go as planned, whether it's a missed deadline, a failed conversation, or a personal setback, resist the urge to immediately seek comfort or distraction. Instead, carve out 20 minutes alone. Write down the 3 questions of the failure audit. Answer them honestly. Close with one final question. What strength did this experience build that I did not have before? Over time, you'll begin to notice patterns. Maybe you consistently underestimate how long projects take. Maybe you avoid difficult conversations until they explode. Maybe you let emotions guide decisions more than reason. These patterns will only become clear when you face them in solitude. And once you see them, you can change them. Remember this. Every expert in any field is simply someone who has failed more times than beginners and learned from each one. Your failures are not proof that you are unworthy of success. They are proof that you are in the arena, that you are playing the game. Failure is not your enemy. It is your private university. And tuition may be painful, but the lessons are priceless. Principle number 5, building your inner fortress. Life will test you. People will insult you. Plans will collapse. Health will waver. Fortunes will rise and fall. But through it all, the Stoic Warrior knows that there is one place the world cannot touch unless you allow it, the fortress within. Epictetus, born a slave yet remembered as one of history's greatest teachers, said, "No one can hurt you without your consent." That statement isn't naive. It's profoundly practical. The outer world can bruise your body, take your money, even shake your circumstances. But your inner fortress, your values, your peace, your character, remains yours to defend or surrender. Most people live without such a fortress. They are exposed to every storm of opinion, every gust of circumstance. If someone speaks harshly to them, their entire day is ruined. If plans fall apart, they spiral into despair. If others succeed, they feel diminished. It is as if they've handed out the keys to their peace of mind to anyone who happens to walk by. The Stoic Warrior is different. They build an inner citadel so solid that while the winds of life still blow, they no longer topple the walls. And like any fortress, it has layers of defense. The first layer is perspective. This is the ability to zoom out and see events in the context of your whole life, or even of human history. That cruel comment? In perspective, it is nothing more than air leaving someone's mouth. That setback? In perspective, it is a passing moment in a long journey. Perspective reminds you, this too shall pass. The second layer is principles. These are the clear values you've chosen after careful thought. Not the rules society imposes on you, but the commitments you decide make life worth living. When you know what you stand for, you cannot be pushed around by every opinion. If honesty is one of your principles, then no temptation can shake you. If courage is one of your principles, then fear cannot stop you. Principles anchor you when the world is in chaos. The innermost keep, the heart of the fortress, is identity. The Stoics understood that you are not your roles, not your possessions, not even your fleeting thoughts and feelings. You are the consciousness that observes them. This identity is untouchable because it does not depend on external conditions. When you live from this center, you stop being controlled by labels, by titles, by what you own or lose. Let's imagine a real-life scenario. A woman in her early 60s loses her job after decades of service. For many, such a blow would destroy their sense of self. But she had built her fortress. Her perspective reminded her that she was more than a job title. Her principles told her that integrity and perseverance mattered more than corporate approval, and at her core, her identity remained unshaken. Instead of collapsing, she used a moment to finally pursue the creative work she had postponed for years. That fortress saved her from despair and turned loss into liberation. So how do you build your fortress? Begin today. Choose one area where you've been overly dependent on external validation. Maybe your mood rises and falls with social media likes. Maybe your self-worth depends on constant achievement. Write down a principle to guide you in that area, something you want to live by regardless of others, then practice it daily. Each time you choose your response instead of reacting automatically, you lay another brick. Each time you hold to your principle despite pressure, you strengthen the wall. Each time you find peace in the midst of chaos, you expand the inner sanctuary. Remember, the fortress is not built in a single day. It is daily labor. But over time, it becomes your greatest asset, because storms will come. The question is not whether you will face difficulty, but whether you will have built a fortress strong enough to withstand it, while still keeping the windows open for light and connection. The Stoic Warrior builds his fortress not to shut the world out, but to engage it fully, without losing themselves. Strong walls do not make you isolated. They make you sovereign. Principle number 6, the courage to disappoint others. One of the hardest truths in life is this: if you live authentically, you will disappoint someone. It might be a parent who hoped you would follow their chosen path. It might be a friend who resents your new boundaries. It might even be colleagues who dislike that you refuse to play along with their games. Most people cannot bear this. They confuse being liked with being respected. They say yes when their whole heart screams no. They carry relationships that drain them, stay in jobs that suffocate them, and pursue goals that were never theirs, all because they cannot face a look of disappointment on someone else's face. But the Stoic Warrior understands a deeper truth. Trying to please everyone is not kindness. It is betrayal of yourself. And when you betray yourself long enough, you end up betraying everyone else too. Because you cannot give the world your best if you're living someone else's script. Aristotle once said, "To avoid criticism, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing." That is the path of invisibility. The Stoic Warrior refuses that path. They know that if you take a stand, if you follow your own vision, some people will be upset. But they also know that living a false life satisfies no one, not even those who pressured you into it. Let me paint a picture. A young man chooses art school instead of law, breaking his father's heart. For years, the tension lingers. But over time, the father sees something undeniable. His son is alive, vibrant, fulfilled. That disappointment was real, but it was temporary. If the son had chosen law only to satisfy his father, both of them would have suffered for a lifetime. The Stoic Warrior practices what I call strategic disappointment. This means consciously choosing whom you are willing to disappoint, and in what ways, in order to remain true to your values. You cannot fight every battle. You cannot resist every expectation. But you must choose the hills worth dying on, the places where compromise would damage your integrity. How do you do this in daily life? Begin with small acts of authentic refusal. When someone invites you to a social event you do not want to attend, say no politely but firmly. When gossip arises in the office, refuse to participate, even if it costs you popularity. When a relative pressures you into choices that do not align with your principles, state your boundary with clarity and kindness. You can even prepare simple boundary scripts. For example, "I appreciate your concern, but I've made a decision that feels right for me." Or, "I value our relationship, but I need to decline this because it doesn't align with my priorities." These phrases allow you to protect your authenticity without cruelty. And here's the paradox. People often respect you more when you have boundaries than when you have none. At first, they may resist, they may be disappointed, but over time, they will know exactly where you stand. And that honesty creates trust. Remember this. A life spent avoiding disappointment will always disappoint the one person who matters most, you. The Stoic Warrior would rather face the temporary sting of letting someone down than the permanent ache of betraying their own soul. Principle number 7, Victory through self-mastery. The world is obsessed with external victories, defeating rivals, accumulating wealth, gaining recognition. But the Stoic Warrior knows the greatest conquest is not out there. The greatest conquest is within. True victory is the master of your own mind, your own emotions, your own impulses. The ancient philosopher Lao Tzu captured it perfectly. He who conquers others is strong. He who conquers himself is mighty. Strength may impress the crowd, but self-mastery makes you unshakable. Self-mastery does not mean becoming robotic or suppressing your humanity. It is not about killing desire or feeling nothing. Rather, it is about learning to direct your inner world instead of being dragged around by it. It is the difference between being driven by emotions and using emotions as information. It is the difference between being enslaved by your thoughts and observing them with calm detachment. Let's bring this down to earth. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Do you instantly explode in rage, or do you pause, breathe, and let it go? You receive harsh criticism. Do you lash out defensively, or do you calmly ask if there is anything useful in the feedback? You feel the urge to procrastinate on important work. Do you give in, or do you act in alignment with your long-term values? These may seem like small moments, but they're the battlegrounds where self-mastery is won or lost. Each time you choose your response instead of reacting automatically, you strengthen what the Stoics call the ruling faculty, your capacity for conscious choice. Over time, these victories accumulate. Each decision to act from wisdom instead of impulse builds a deeper kind of power, the kind no one can take from you. External victories can be stolen, fortunes can be lost, titles can be stripped, but the inner victory of self-mastery endures. Here's a simple practice to begin. Create an if, then plan for your common triggers. If I feel anger rising, then I will pause, take 3 slow breaths, and ask, will this matter in a year? If I feel tempted to procrastinate, then I will set a timer for 10 minutes and begin the task anyway. If I feel unworthy because of criticism, then I will write down 3 past challenges I have already overcome. By preparing your responses in advance, you turn automatic reactions into deliberate choices. This is how mastery is forged, one moment at a time. Self-mastery also means redefining your relationship with desire. It does not mean eliminating all wants. It means distinguishing between healthy ambition and desperate attachment. You can prefer success without being destroyed by failure. You can pursue goals without making your identity depend on them. You can enjoy possessions without being enslaved by them. Consider this. Many people achieve outward success, but remain tormented inside. They conquer markets, build empires, or collect awards, yet they cannot conquer their own anger, their own fear, or their own ego. Outwardly victorious, inwardly defeated. The Stoic Warrior chooses the opposite. They may or may not win external battles, but they never surrender the inner one, because when you master yourself, you can lose everything else and still remain whole. This final principle ties all the others together. Sacred solitude gives you the space to know yourself. Immunity to opinion frees you to act authentically. Self-reliance gives you the strength to stand firm. Failure becomes your teacher. The inner fortress protects your peace. The courage to disappoint others secures your integrity. And all of it culminates here, in the ultimate victory, mastery of self. When you achieve this mastery, you walk alone, not because you are antisocial, but because you are self-sufficient. You rise alone, not because you are selfish, but because you are strong enough to lift others. You win alone, not because you do not care about people, but because your victory is internal, and therefore unassailable. You've now walked through the 7 principles of the Stoic Warrior. Think about what they truly mean when woven together. Sacred solitude teaches you to find peace in your own presence. Opinion immunity frees you from the prison of other people's judgments. Self-reliance grounds you in strength, so you can give without desperation. Failure, as your private university, transforms setbacks into lessons. Building your inner fortress protects your values and peace of mind against life storms. The courage to disappoint others secures your authenticity, even when it costs you approval. Victory through self-mastery crowns it all, reminding you that the greatest conquest is within. Taken together, these are not just abstract philosophies. They are weapons and tools, Practical strategies you can carry into the battles of everyday life. And here's the deeper truth. Walking alone does not mean being lonely. Rising alone does not mean being selfish. Winning alone does not mean turning your back on others. It means you are finally strong enough to serve, to love, and to give without fear, without need, and without chains. The world tells you dependence is safety, that conformity is comfort, that validation is love. But the Stoic Warrior rejects these illusions. They know that freedom is found within. And when you master yourself, no one can take that freedom away. So let me leave you with a challenge. Do not just listen to these words and move on. Pick one principle, just one, and practice it today. Maybe it's 10 minutes of sacred solitude. Maybe it's saying no kindly but firmly where you would have said yes before. Maybe it's writing a failure audit instead of hiding from your mistakes. Small steps compound into transformation. And if you want to go further, I prepared something for you, the Stoic Warrior Kit. It's a simple guide that condenses all 7 principles into one place, so you can review them daily, practice them consistently, and carry them like armor. The link is below. Download it and make it your companion. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment with the principle that struck you the most, and subscribe because this journey doesn't end here. Each week, we'll go deeper, sharpening the warrior's mind, heart, and spirit. Remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. The world does not need more noise. It needs more warriors, calm, strong, and free. Warriors who walk their path with courage. Warriors who rise with integrity. Warriors who win by mastering themselves. The question now is simple. Will you walk the path?